Welcome, curious minds, to another deep dive. Have you ever found yourself just, gazing out at the horizon, wishing you could just go
Yeah.
on some endless journey far from everything where the stars are just incredibly bright? Maybe the Milky Way looks like a river up there. Imagine traveling on and on, nothing but waves all around you.
That sounds impossible, right?
It's actually possible if you just sail out into the ocean.
That really does sound like a dream, doesn't it? A kind of perfect escape. And when we say the ocean, we're often thinking about something, well, something bigger than we can easily grasp, almost infinite. Just think about this. The ocean covers 3 times more area than all the land on Earth put together. We usually split it up,
Yeah.
Pacific, Atlantic, Indian. But the Pacific alone, it's almost as big as the other two combined. Can you really wrap your head around traveling across something that colossal?
Oh, wow. I'm already hooked. That scale is just. I hadn't thought of a specific ocean, but if it's the Pacific, yeah, that definitely adds another layer. It always sounds so huge, so mysterious. People even say, don't they, that oceans hold more secrets than outer space. And the Pacific must be like right at the top of that mystery list. But honestly, I don't know that much about it beyond the name and the size. So, what's our mission today? What are we trying to figure out here?
Well, what's really fascinating, I think, is that the Pacific Ocean isn't just big water. It's a system, a global system, way more powerful than any geographical region you could name. And yeah, arguably more mysterious than anything else on Earth. But, the world rarely stops to think about it, right? Most people just see it as that big blue patch on the map and move on. But today, we're not moving on. Today, we pause. We're going to try and peel back that surface, dive into its secrets, uncover some of those mysteries, and maybe, just maybe, get a sense of its incredible depth and importance. So let's start this journey, and hopefully you, our listener, you're right there with us, ready to dive in.
I am definitely ready. Ready for this endless, beautiful journey into the mighty Pacific. But before we go too deep, can we really get a fix on where it is on the globe and just its size,
Yeah.
its sheer magnitude? It's hard to picture.
Absolutely. Yeah, let's ground ourselves first. It helps to connect it to the bigger picture, right? The
Exactly.
Pacific isn't just, sitting neatly between continents. It stretches. It goes from the icy shores of Antarctica way down south all the way up to the Arctic Ocean in the north, near the Bering Strait, and then sideways, if you like. It stretches from the west coast of Asia and Australia all the way across the east coasts of North and South America. It's honestly a world in itself. We're talking over 63 million square miles of surface area. Just to try and put that into perspective, this one ocean, it's bigger than all the land on Earth.
Okay.
Combined. Just let that sink in for a second.
Wait a minute, bigger than all land combined?
Yeah.
That feels impossible.
Yeah.
So you're saying the Pacific is larger than Africa, Asia, Europe, the Americas, every single continent, all put together. That's completely mind-blowing. It changes how I even see the planet.
It's this dynamic living system. It's vaster, more powerful than any continent, more profound than any region we usually study, and yeah, arguably more mysterious than anything else on Earth. And that infinity, it's not just across the surface. Oh no. Beneath those waves, you've got trenches so deep they make Mount Everest look, well, not small, but they easily swallow it. And what's down there? It's weirder than any science fiction you could dream up. So this brings up a question for us, doesn't it? Should we dive straight down into those depths now? Or maybe we should first look at how people through history have tried to understand this immense thing, its impact on cultures. Let's maybe trace that historical impact first before we take the plunge,
That scale is just still rattling around in my head, covering more than all the land. Wow. Nowadays, okay, we have satellites, we have ships, technology, we know something about it.
Right.
But I keep thinking, oceans have been around forever, billions of years, before even life on land. So what about earlier people? Ancient civilizations living on its shores. What did they think of the Pacific? What did they know? What stories did they tell?
That's a beautiful question. And it opens up one of the most fascinating chapters, I think. Because for ancient cultures, the Pacific was never just water. No way. It was mystery, it was myth, it was God, sometimes it was home, all wrapped up together. For thousands of years, people looked at this endless blue, and they tried to make sense of it, And the stories and beliefs they created, they deeply shaped their cultures, their whole view of the cosmos. Let's unpack some of that. Maybe start in East Asia, see how they saw it. East Asia, China and Japan. Okay, so in China, going way back, like the Han Dynasty, that's around 200 BCE, there are maps, there are writings, they talk about the Eastern Sea, the Donghai. And for the ancient Chinese, this ocean wasn't just empty space, not at all. It was this realm of wonder, sometimes magical. Their legends are full of these mythical islands like Penglai. Have you heard of Penglai?
I don't think so, no. What was special about it?
Well, Penglai was this legendary paradise out in the Eastern Sea. It's where immortals were said to live, where magical herbs grew, where even time flowed differently. And get this, powerful emperors, guys who controlled huge armies and lands. They sent these big expeditions out not to conquer, but specifically to find these islands. They weren't chasing land, they were chasing immortality itself. So the ocean, for them, was literally seen as a gateway, maybe to the divine, or at least to eternity.
Wow. Not just water, but a doorway to forever.
Yeah.
That puts a whole different spin on exploration, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Spiritual.
Exactly. And then you look at Japan, similar kind of vibe, but also different. For Japan, the Pacific was obviously a highway, vital for connection, for trade, but it was also deeply sacred, a place of mystery. Japanese mythology talks a lot about Rijin. He's the sea god, this majestic dragon king. He was said to rule from this amazing crystal palace deep beneath the waves, a powerful, powerful figure. The whole ocean was seen as this divine kingdom, filled with dragons, spirits, protectors. So every storm, every big wave crashing on the shore, that wasn't random weather. No, that was seen as the direct action of the gods, their will being expressed. It commanded this deep respect, awe, really, from everyone living near the coast. That spiritual connection was just woven into everything, their culture, their identity. Polynesia and Pacific Islanders. But maybe no one had a deeper, more sophisticated relationship with the Pacific than the Polynesians. Long before Europeans like Magellan even dreamed of crossing it. These guys were absolute masters of navigation. Just try to picture it, traveling thousands of miles across open, featureless water, and doing it with no modern maps, no compass, none of that.
Yeah.
They were guided only by the stars, incredibly complex star charts memorized over generations, by the subtle patterns of ocean swells, the way waves refract around islands miles away, even the flight paths of birds heading back to land. Just incredible knowledge. For them, the Pacific wasn't some scary barrier to cross. It was their home. It was their roadmap, their pantry, their whole world. In Hawaiian tradition, for instance, the ocean belonged to Kanaloa, a really powerful sea god. So their whole existence was tied to this divine, vast presence. Every single canoe voyage wasn't just travel from A to B. It was sacred, like a pilgrimage. They weren't just carrying people and supplies. They carried their entire cosmology with them, their whole understanding of life, the universe, their ancestors, all encoded in their deep knowledge of the sea and sky.
That's truly amazing. So they weren't afraid of it, not in the same way others might have been. They really embraced it. They understood its rhythms. They respected its power. They lived with it. This is where it gets really interesting, I think. That level of intimacy.
Exactly. It was like a living map to them. A map infused with gods and ancestors. It wasn't just water, it was a dynamic, sacred space full of knowledge. Their survival, their culture, everything was just intrinsically woven into the ocean's fabric. It's a relationship that's hard for us to fully grasp today, I think. South America, pre-Columbian civilizations. Now, jump across the Pacific to the other side. The western coast of South America, what's now Peru, Ecuador, Chile. Ancient civilizations there also deeply revered the ocean. They absolutely recognized its power and how vital its resources were. Take the Mache civilization. They were around from maybe 100 to 800 CE. Their pottery, it's incredible, covered in these intricate paintings of sea gods, marine creatures. For them, the ocean was clearly tied to fertility, to life-giving resources, but also to sacrifice. They understood it could be demanding, fearsome too. And then the Inca, later on, this huge empire, they called Pacific Mamacocha, Mother Sea.
Mother Sea. That's beautiful. It evokes nurturing, right?
Yes, exactly. She was the provider, gave fish, food, sustained the people, but they also knew her duality. She was the one who sent the destructive storms too. So before any big voyage, or even just for important fishing trips, they'd perform these complex rituals, offering prayers, gifts, trying to appease Mamacocha, calm her anger, ensure a safe return. For these cultures, you see, the Pacific wasn't a place to conquer or exploit. It was a powerful goddess. She had to be respected, honored, appeased constantly.
It's fascinating how different, yet how central the Pacific was to all these cultures. Immortality in China, powerful gods in Japan,
Yeah.
this nurturing but fierce Mother Sea in South America. The ocean seems to reflect back the deepest beliefs and anxieties of each culture, doesn't it?
That's a great way to put it. It really does. It's a mirror to their worldview. Europe, before Magellan,
Right.
and then contrast all that with Europe. For a very long time, the Pacific just wasn't really on their radar. Medieval maps, those beautiful old mappa mundi, they usually showed the Atlantic and beyond the Atlantic. Just this vague, often terrifying, endless ocean sea. Uncharted, unknown. And what did they think was out there? Well, sailors filled that void with their worst fears. Sea monsters. Huge, ship-swallowing whirlpools. Some even thought the world had literal edges out there where ships would just fall off.
Fall off the edge. Wow. That's a primal fear.
Totally. And the legends. Chilling stories of leviathans, giant sea serpents lurking just beneath the waves. But also tantalizing myths mixed in, golden islands, impossible riches just beyond reach, a weird mix of terror and temptation. But for many Europeans back then, this huge Western Ocean, it wasn't seen as a pathway, it was a trap. A place where ships vanished without a trace. Forever. It was a blank space on their physical maps, yeah, but in their minds. It was filled with horrors born from fear of the unknown, Southeast Asia. And then you had the islanders of Southeast Asia, Indonesia, the Philippines, all through Micronesia. For these cultures, the Pacific wasn't a void or a barrier. It was a network, an intricate web of routes connecting countless islands. It was their world, their highway, their trading space. Their beliefs were deeply tied to the ocean's movements too. Spirits were thought to live in storms, powerful entities you had to respect. Ancestors were believed to guide the navigators, their wisdom passed down through complex star lore and chants. And their oral traditions. They told stories of things like floating islands.
Floating islands, like actual islands moving around.
Well, maybe sometimes large rafts of vegetation broken off from rivers. Or maybe lands that appeared and disappeared with tides or volcanic activity. They existed in this space between real and mythical, blurring those lines. For these communities, the Pacific was just alive. Full of unseen forces, spirits, ancestral guidance, it shaped everything. Ferdinand Magellan, 1520. And then, slight pause for effect, then came 1520. Ferdinand Magellan, Portuguese explorer sailing for Spain, driven by that obsessive quest for a western route to the Spice Islands. Big money involved. He and his crew crossed this incredibly dangerous, stormy strait at the tip of South America, the passage that now has his name. It tested them to their absolute limit. Ships were lost, men died. But what he found beyond that treacherous strait was this enormous body of water. Unlike anything any European had ever seen or even really conceived of, and, crucially, his remaining ships entered it under unusually calm, favorable conditions. Such a stark contrast to the hell they'd just been through. And apparently, in that moment of immense relief, he named it Mar Pacifico, the peaceful sea. A name born purely from that brief, lucky experience, that moment of calm. But, as history quickly showed, and as we know all too well today, that name turned out to be deeply, deeply ironic. The Pacific is anything but consistently peaceful, it's restless, it can be incredibly violent, it's intensely alive, far more powerful really than any force of nature you find on land, capable of sublime calm, yes, but also unimaginable fury.
Quietly, almost whispering. Wow. So, across all those cultures, gods, myths, mothers, monsters, the Pacific was never just water. It was always something more. Alive, mysterious, and Magellan's name, peaceful sea. It actually hides the real truth, doesn't it? That the Pacific is maybe the most unpeaceful, the most powerful, the most untamed sea of them all.
Exactly. Before Magellan, nobody living around it would have called it peaceful in their minds. Not really. For Asians, it was mystical, divine, full of immortal isles. For Polynesians, it was the highway of life itself, their whole universe mapped onto the waves. For South Americans, a mother and a destroyer goddess, demanding respect. For Europeans mostly, a terrifying unknown void filled with monsters. Only after Magellan's fleeting, calm passage did it get the name Pacific. But for those who truly knew its character, who lived with its moods, it had always been far more complex, far more alive than just peaceful. Its history isn't just about drawing lines on maps or giving names, it's about how humanity, in all its diversity, tried to grapple with infinity. But okay, if the history is that rich, what about what's actually inside this ocean? What lies beneath that vast surface? Because that's where things get, well, even more thrilling, maybe even stranger than the myths.
Leaning in slightly, voice filled with amazement. The more we talk about the Pacific, its size, the history, the myths, the more overwhelming it feels. It really is like standing at the edge of infinity, isn't it? We've touched on the surface, the ancient views, but tell me this. Now, today, with all our amazing technology, we've got deep-sea submarines, satellites mapping the surface, sonar systems. How much do we actually know about what's really down there, beneath all those waves?
A slight smile, but a serious tone underneath. That right there is probably the most mind-blowing and frankly humbling part of this whole story. Despite centuries of people sailing across it and all our modern tools, we have only mapped with modern high-resolution tech about 20% of the Pacific seafloor.
20%, only 1/5.
Yeah, only 1/5. Which means a staggering 80% is still largely a mystery. A huge unexplored frontier right here on our own planet, hiding who knows what? Now compare that. We've mapped like 99% of the moon's surface in detail, and Mars too, which leads to this really weird situation. We know more about the surface of planets hundreds of millions of kilometers away than we do about the bottom of the biggest ocean on our own homeworld.
Shaking head slowly in disbelief. Wait, hold on. That is absolutely insane. You're seriously telling me the moon, nearly 400,000 kilometers away, and Mars, even further. We know them better than the ocean floor right beneath us, the ocean that covers most of our planet. Okay, let's unpack that. It's just staggering. So what have we actually seen in that tiny 20% that's so incredible?
Nodding gravely. Exactly. It's a strange truth, isn't it? And the little bits we have managed to explore, they already feel like something straight out of science fiction. Take the Mariana Trench, you've probably heard of it, the deepest gash on Earth's crust. At its very bottom point, a spot called the Challenger Deep, it plunges down about 11 kilometers. That's almost 7 miles straight down.
11 kilometers.
Yeah. To try and visualize that, if you took Mount Everest, the highest mountain on land, and you somehow dropped it into the Challenger Deep, its summit would still be submerged, covered by more than 2 kilometers of water.
Wow, just swallowed whole.
Completely. And the pressure down there, it's immense, over 1,000 times the pressure we feel right now at the surface, enough to crush most things instantly if they weren't built specifically to withstand it.
Voice lowered, almost a whisper. That's terrifying. Just imagining that crushing weight, the darkness. It really is like another planet down there. Hostile. Alien.
Leaning forward slightly, voice tinged with excitement. And in so many ways, it is another planet, right here. When those few submersibles, like the Trieste way back in 1960, or James Cameron's solo dive more recently in 2012, when they made their way down into those abyssal zones, every single descent was like entering an alien world. Total blackness, freezing cold, that unimaginable pressure, and yet, life. Astonishingly, life still exists down there, thriving against all the odds. Life in the darkness?
Life. Seriously. Down there, in that crushing cold and absolute darkness. How? What kind of life could possibly survive that?
Oh, absolutely. Life finds a way, right? And down there, it's found some truly strange and wonderful ways. Some of the most bizarre, most resilient creatures on Earth live in the Pacific depths. And one of the most amazing things, how they cope with the dark. Nearly 90% of deep-sea species create their own light. It's called bioluminescence.
They make their own light.
Yeah, imagine just drifting in total absolute blackness miles below the sun, and suddenly the void just comes alive with these little glowing sparks, flashes of light, tiny living lanterns. It must look like underwater galaxies floating past, just mesmerizing, unique.
Orchestring slightly. That sounds magical, like something from a fantasy world, but it's real.
And the creatures themselves, they are beyond imagination, adapted in these incredible ways. You've got the anglerfish, right? The famous one with the glowing lure dangling in front to attract prey. Classic deep-sea image. Or the gulper eel. Its jaws can stretch so wide it can swallow fish almost as big as itself, like a living vacuum cleaner in the dark. And then there's the stuff of legends, like the giant squid. These massive creatures, over 13 meters long, rarely seen, hidden down there, fueling myths for centuries. Oh, and the vampire squid. It sounds terrifying, right? But it's amazing. It has this dark, cloak-like webbing and these glowing blue eyes. Looks like it swam right out of another dimension.
A nervous chuckle. Okay, yeah, it definitely sounds like a horror movie cast list. But they're real. Just down there. Living in a world we can barely imagine.
Nodding slowly. Real. And what's more, we're constantly finding new ones. Every single year, expeditions discover new species in the deep Pacific, creatures never seen before, which means there must be countless others still down there. Hidden, unknown, maybe forever. So, the alien parallel.
Leaning back slightly, processing this whole conversation.
Yeah.
It feels less and less like we're talking about Earth. It feels more
Yeah.
like, well, outer space. The adaptations, the environment. It's just so alien. This is where it gets really interesting, doesn't it? That parallel.
Grinning slightly. You're
Yeah.
absolutely right to make that connection. Scientists actually call the deep trenches Earth's inner space. And for a very good reason. The ecosystems down there, many of them don't rely on sunlight at all, which is, the basis for almost all life up here on the surface. Instead, down at places like hydrothermal vents, these are like volcanic fissures on the seabed spewing out super hot mineral-rich water. Life there survives through something called chemosynthesis.
Chemosynthesis, what's that?
It means bacteria, microorganisms, get their energy not from sunlight, but from chemical reactions. They feed on the chemicals coming out of the Earth's crust, like sulfur compounds. And these bacteria form the very base of a whole food web down there, completely independent of the sun.
Excitedly so. Wait, if life can exist like that, in total darkness, getting energy from chemicals.
Finishing the thought with clear fascination, then maybe life could exist in similar extreme environments elsewhere in the solar system or beyond. That's exactly why space agencies like NASA are so interested in the deep Pacific. They study these hydrothermal vent ecosystems to understand if life could potentially survive in the hidden oceans we think exist under the ice on moons like Europa orbiting Jupiter or Enceladus orbiting Saturn. So exploring the Pacific deep, in a very real sense, it's like exploring how life might work on alien worlds. It's fundamental.
Geological thrill.
Voice filled with awe. Okay, so the life is alien. What about the ground itself, the seafloor down there? Beneath all that water, all that pressure, it must be just as dynamic and mysterious as the creatures, right? Firmly, oh, absolutely. You can't separate the two. The geology creates those habitats. And remember, the Pacific sits right on the Ring of Fire. This is the most geologically active zone on the entire planet. So you have constant action down there. Earthquakes, obviously. Volcanoes erupting underwater, entire new islands being born from the sea, pushing up from the mantle. Some of these underwater volcanoes, called seamounts, are actually taller than mountains like Mount Fuji, but completely hidden beneath the waves. And then you find these really bizarre phenomena. Things like underwater lakes.
Underwater lakes, how does that work?
They're pools of super salty water brine that's much denser than the surrounding seawater, so it just sits there, forming a distinct lake on the ocean floor, sometimes with its own shoreline. Looks like a mirror down there. You also find pools of methane hydrates, like frozen methane gas, holding huge amounts of energy. And those hydrothermal vents we mentioned, the black smokers, they're like geysers pouring out this scalding, mineral-rich water, creating these incredible chimney-like structures and supporting those unique ecosystems.
Stunned. It sounds like the Earth is literally alive down there, breathing fire and chemicals into the sea, constantly reshaping itself.
That's a perfect way to describe it. The Pacific seafloor is dynamic. It's a planet within our planet, operating under its own extreme rules. Legends plus monsters.
Leaning in again, a playful tone returning. Okay, so with all this truly bizarre stuff going on down there, alien life, underwater volcanoes, weird lakes, I have to ask again, is this where the old sea monster legends came from? Could there have been glimpses of this stuff?
Smiling knowingly. It seems highly likely, doesn't it? You look at the mythology across the Pacific Islands, it's just full of these incredible sea serpents, dragons, giant octopus-like creatures, the kraken. Fishermen in places like Japan still tell stories passed down for generations about enormous creatures rising from the depths, capable of swallowing boats. And we know European sailors for centuries were terrified of leviathans lurking just out of sight. Their fears were probably fueled by the sheer unknown, sure, but maybe also by fleeting glimpses of genuinely large, strange marine animals they just couldn't explain. A giant squid arm surfacing, maybe? A whale carcass distorted by decay?
Half joking. Okay. But come on, actual giant monsters. That's just folklore, right? We've surely found all the really big stuff by now.
Pauses deliberately, letting the suspense hang. Here's the thing. Science keeps surprising us. We only relatively recently got solid proof, like film footage, of the giant squid alive in its deep-sea habitat. For ages, it was practically mythical, known only from carcasses. And then there's the colossal squid, even bigger, even heavier, even more elusive than the giant squid. Another creature that seemed like pure legend until we found real evidence. So, if creatures we thought were mythical turned out to be real, Who's to definitively say what else might still be hiding down there in that vast, unexplored 80%? The potential for discovering truly enormous unknown animals isn't zero. It's low probability, maybe, but the space for surprises is huge.
The unknowable.
Quietly, reflectively. So what we do know already pushes the limits of our imagination. It's incredible. But what we don't know, that space is just immense, even bigger, and maybe even more profound. Voice filled with awe. Exactly, that's the crux of it. Beyond the known lies this vast ocean of the unknown. The Pacific is so huge, so deep, so hidden. Entire ecosystems, maybe entire species, could be living down there completely undisturbed for millions of years, evolved in ways we can't even guess, totally separate from our sunlit world. Some scientists, they do speculate about apex predators far larger than anything we've documented, the kind of giant beasts that fueled those ancient myths. Megalodon is extinct, but could something else be down there? Probably not. But the possibility, however remote, is tantalizing. But here's the humbling reality. Whether it's giant monsters or microscopic microbes we haven't found yet, the Pacific remains the largest single living space on Earth, and we have barely scratched the surface. We've only seen fragments, tiny glimpses.
Looking thoughtful, as if gazing out. So when we look out at that endless horizon, that seemingly empty blue,
Finishing the thought softly, almost poetically. What really overwhelms us, or maybe should overwhelm us, isn't just the size, it's the profound suspense of the unknown. The sheer potential for discovery. Beneath those waves might lie creatures stranger than anything we imagine from sci-fi, landscapes more surreal than Mars, and answers to fundamental questions about life that humankind hasn't even thought to ask yet. It's a constant reminder that our planet still holds immense mysteries. A moment of silence hangs, allowing the weight of the unknown to resonate.
shifting tone, sounding deeply thoughtful.
Wow.
Okay, so when we look at the Pacific, we often see this wilderness, right? Full of mystery, maybe danger, definitely secrets. But there's another side to this, isn't there? A really profound truth. The Pacific isn't just a big separate entity over there. It's like the beating heart of Earth itself. Without it, our planet, as we know it, just couldn't exist. Not in a way that supports us anyway. Its influence is everywhere, touching everything. Our climate, our air, our food. So what does this deep connection really mean for us, for humanity?
That's exactly right. And what's truly fascinating is just how intimately, how deeply our daily lives are tied to this huge body of water, often in ways we don't even realize. It's not just scenery, it actively shapes our entire world. One, the climate engine of Earth. Okay, first up, climate. The Pacific basically acts as the planet's main climate regulator. Think of it like Earth's thermostat, a really big, really complex thermostat. You've probably heard of El Nino and La Nina.
Yeah, vaguely. They affect weather, right? Rain and stuff.
Exactly, but it's way bigger than just local weather. These are enormous climate phenomena born in the Pacific, and they have the power to reshape weather patterns across the entire globe. El Nino, for example, warms parts of the Pacific. That can lead to flooding in Peru, but drought in Australia. It can shift storm tracks, affect hurricane seasons in the Atlantic, change monsoon rains in India. La Nina often does the opposite, generally cooling things globally, shifting rainfall patterns differently. Just picture it. Conditions in one ocean deciding if farmers thousands of miles away get enough rain for their crops, or if wildfire risk goes up in California because it's drier. That's the incredible reach, the direct power of the Pacific's influence on our global climate system.
That's a really powerful way to think about it. One ocean acting like a global puppet master for weather. But why the Pacific specifically? Is it just its size, or is there something else going on?
Size is definitely a huge factor. It holds an enormous amount of heat, more than any other ocean basin. This massive heat reservoir interacts with the atmosphere above it over a vast area. And unlike, say, the Atlantic, which is more hemmed in by continents, the Pacific allows these large-scale ocean atmosphere oscillations, like El Nino, to really develop and build momentum across a huge, uninterrupted expanse. This allows them to have these truly global impacts. It's the combination of sheer scale and geographical openness, really. 2, the lungs of the planet. Now, think about breathing. We often call the Amazon rainforest the lungs of Earth, right? And it is vital. But here's a twist that surprises a lot of people. The Pacific Ocean, with its massive populations of tiny microscopic algae called phytoplankton, actually produces more oxygen than all the world's rainforests combined.
More than all rainforests.
Oh,
Seriously. These
no.
tiny things.
Yeah, seriously. Scientists estimate that phytoplankton, these little drifting plant-like organisms near the surface, generate somewhere between 50% and maybe even 80% of the entire planet's oxygen supply. Just let that sink in. Every second breath you take right now, listening to this, is thanks to life you can't even see, floating in the Pacific and other oceans. These tiny phytoplankton are the silent, absolutely essential guardians of our ability to breathe. It's staggering.
That is staggering and completely changes my perspective on where our air comes from. But if they're so vital, are they vulnerable? How sensitive are these phytoplankton to changes in the ocean?
Extremely sensitive, that's the worry. Even small changes in ocean temperature can affect where they bloom and which species thrive. And ocean acidification, which we'll get to, makes it harder for some types to build their tiny shells. So, yeah, while they're powerful oxygen producers, the whole system is quite delicate. Disruptions there aren't just ecological footnotes, they could genuinely impact the oxygen levels we depend on. 3. The giant carbon sink. Okay, so the Pacific gives us oxygen, but it also protects us from ourselves in a way. The world's oceans absorb a huge amount of the carbon dioxide, the KORs, that we pump into the atmosphere from burning fossil fuels. Roughly 25 to 30% of all human emissions each year gets soaked up by the ocean. And the Pacific, because it's so enormous, does the lion's share of that work. It takes in billions of tons of carbon. Essentially, it's drawing down KORs from the air, which significantly slows down the rate of climate change. Without the Pacific acting as this giant carbon sponge, our planet would be heating up much, much faster. It would likely be far less habitable already. But there's a major cost to this service. As the ocean absorbs more coho, its chemistry changes. It becomes more acidic. Ocean acidification. So the Pacific is quietly suffering, its waters changing chemically, while it's buffering us from the worst effects. And this acidification is a huge threat to marine life, especially things with shells like corals and shellfish.
That's a really disturbing trade-off. It saves us but harms itself. You mentioned coral reefs and shellfish. What specifically does this acidification do to them? How does it hurt them?
Basically, the lower pH, the increased acidity, makes it harder for these organisms to extract carbonate ions from the seawater, which they need to build their shells and skeletons made of calcium carbonate. Think of it like trying to build a house when the price of bricks keeps going up, or the bricks themselves are crumbling. For corals, it leads to weaker skeletons and bleaching. For shellfish like oysters or clams, weaker shells make them more vulnerable to predators and environmental stress. Even tiny plankton at the base of the food web struggle. It's a fundamental chemical attack on the building blocks of marine life. 4. The biodiversity kingdom. And that marine life is incredibly rich in the Pacific. It holds the highest biodiversity of any ocean basin on Earth. It's a true biological treasure chest. You've got iconic places like the Great Barrier Reef off Australia, so big you can see it from space. And the Coral Triangle in Southeast Asia, sometimes called the Amazon of the seas because it's just packed with species. Over 75% of all known coral species are found in the Pacific.
75%. Just in the Pacific.
Yeah. But it's not just the shallow reefs. You've got unique ecosystems in the deep, too. Those hydrothermal vents we talked about with their weird life forms. The deep trenches. Huge kelp forests along the coasts. Each one is teeming with life, much of which we barely understand. And here's a crazy statistic. Scientists estimate that over 90% of the species living in the Pacific Ocean are still completely undiscovered by science.
90% undiscovered. That number just keeps getting bigger. What does that even imply? If we don't even know they exist, how can we possibly protect them from things like pollution or climate change?
That's the terrifying implication, isn't it? It implies we're operating in near blindness. Every time we damage a part of the Pacific, maybe through pollution or overfishing or potential deep sea mining, we risk wiping out species we haven't even named yet. Imagine burning down a library before you've even cataloged the books. These species could hold keys to new medicines, insights into evolution, unique genetic adaptations. The potential loss is just incalculable because we don't even know what we're losing. It highlights a profound ethical responsibility, I think. 5. The bridge of civilizations. Now, thinking geographically again, the Pacific isn't really a barrier, it's more like a bridge. A huge watery bridge connecting continents and cultures. It links Asia, Australia, North America, South America. And for thousands of years, people have been crossing it. We talked about the Polynesian navigators pulling off those incredible feats of sailing by stars and swells. And today, it's the superhighway for modern global trade. Massive container ships, super tankers. constantly crossing. The majority of the world's shipping traffic actually happens on the Pacific. Something like half of all global container traffic goes through Asia-Pacific routes. So this ocean is literally the bloodstream of international commerce, vital for the global economy.
A bridge, not a barrier. I like that.
Yeah.
But that image of ancient canoes versus modern supertankers is quite a contrast. Does all that modern shipping traffic, that bloodstream, cause problems for the ocean itself?
Oh, absolutely. It's a double-edged sword. While it enables global trade, all that ship traffic comes with significant environmental costs. There's underwater noise pollution, which can disrupt communication and navigation for marine mammals like whales and dolphins. There's the constant risk of accidents, oil spills, chemical spills, lost containers. Ships also transport invasive species around the world in their ballast water, which can wreak havoc on local ecosystems when released. And then there's air pollution from ship engines. So yes, this vital bridge for humanity definitely takes a toll on the ocean environment. 6. The ocean that feeds humanity. And talking about resources, the Pacific is basically Earth's biggest dining table. It provides a huge amount of the seafood humans consume. Nearly 60% of the world's entire fish catch comes from the Pacific Ocean. 60%.
Well, more than half the world's fish.
Yeah. Feeding billions of people every single day. Think about common fish like tuna, salmon, anchovies, sardines. Huge fisheries for all of those are in the Pacific. It sustains families, communities, entire economies from Japan all the way to Peru and Chile. And it's not just calories, right? It's culture. For countless island communities and coastal peoples, their entire identity, their traditions going back centuries, millennia even, are wrapped up in fishing. The ocean defines who they are.
That's an incredible reliance. 60% is huge. But are those fisheries sustainable? With billions depending on them, what are the biggest threats? Is it just taking too many fish, or are other things hurting them too?
Overfishing is definitely a major, major problem. Many important fish stocks in the Pacific are depleted or are being fished right at their limit or beyond. But it's not the only threat. Climate change is a big one too. Warming waters and changing currents are shifting where fish live, disrupting breeding patterns and impacting their food sources. Then you have pollution plastics, chemicals damaging habitats like coral reefs and estuaries where fish breed. And we also have to mention illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing, IUU fishing, which is rampant in parts of the Pacific, stealing resources and undermining efforts to manage fisheries sustainably. It's a complex mix of pressures. 7. The economic powerhouse. Beyond fish, the Pacific holds other immense economic resources. It's a real powerhouse. There are significant oil and natural gas fields under the seabed in various regions, fueling industries around the world. And then there's this other thing that's becoming a huge topic, deep sea mining. The abyssal plains, the deep ocean floor are scattered with these things called manganese nodules. They look kind of like metallic potatoes just lying there.
Manganese nodules. What's special about them?
They're incredibly rich in valuable metals. Cobalt, nickel, copper, manganese, plus rare earth elements, and these are exactly the metals needed for high-tech stuff. Batteries for electric cars, components for smartphones, wind turbines, all sorts of future technologies. So there's this massive push, this race, starting now to figure out how to mine these nodules from the deep sea floor. But it raises huge, really difficult ethical questions. Are we about to strip mine these unique, ancient, poorly understood deep sea ecosystems, potentially destroying undiscovered life, all for our gadgets and green tech? The science on the environmental impacts is very thin. It's a major dilemma. Profit versus protection in one of Earth's last frontiers.
That is a heavy ethical question. Mining the deep sea for our phones. It feels wrong somehow, given how little we know. Are there any international rules about this yet? Or is it just a free-for-all?
There are rules being developed, but it's complicated. The International Seabed Authority, or ISA, is the UN body responsible for managing mineral resources in international waters, the areas beyond national jurisdiction. They are currently trying to develop a mining code to regulate exploitation and future exploitation. But it's highly contentious. Many scientists and environmental groups are calling for a moratorium, a pause on any mining until we understand the potential damage much better. Some countries support this, others are eager to start mining. So no, it's not a free-for-all, but the framework is still being built and the pressure to mine is intense. It's a critical moment for the future of the deep Pacific. 8. Tourism and imagination. And of course, the Pacific also fuels our dreams, our imagination. Millions of people travel to its islands every year, right? Hawaii, Fiji, Tahiti, the Philippines, seeking that picture of paradise. Beautiful beaches, clear water, amazing cultures. But it's more than just tourism, I think. There's something deeper. The Pacific isn't just a destination, it's kind of an idea, a symbol of vastness, of escape, of the power of nature. Remember, right at the start, we talked about that feeling of gazing at the horizon.
Yeah, that longing for something endless.
Exactly. Some people go to the Pacific's edge not just to swim or surf, but to do just that, to stare into that immensity, to feel small, maybe humbled by the scale, and paradoxically to feel incredibly alive and connected to something bigger than themselves. It sparks something in the human spirit.
It really does resonate, that idea. The Pacific as a place for the soul, almost. Are there famous examples of artists or writers deeply inspired by that specific feeling, that Pacific mystique?
Oh, absolutely. Think of writers like Herman Melville. Moby Dick is set largely in the Pacific, and it's saturated with that sense of awe, terror, and the ocean's overwhelming power. Or painters like Paul Gauguin, captivated by the light and life of Polynesia. And of course, the incredibly rich art and oral traditions of the Pacific Islanders themselves, where the ocean is central to their entire worldview and creativity. Even today, surfers often talk about a spiritual connection to the waves. Conservationists speak with passion about protecting its majesty. It absolutely fuels human imagination and creativity. 9. A silent protector. And finally, in ways we barely even notice most days, the Pacific just silently protects us, every single day. By moving heat around the globe with its huge currents, it helps regulate temperatures, stopping some places from getting too hot or too cold. It keeps the climate relatively stable. By absorbing all that CO, as we said, it slows down climate change, buying us time. By generating so much oxygen, it literally makes our life possible, allows us to breathe. So the Pacific isn't just important, it's fundamental, essential. It truly is the living pulse of planet Earth. An irreplaceable life support system. Quietly, with conviction. So when we talk about the Pacific, yeah, it's mysterious, it can be terrifying, it holds ancient secrets. But it's also the fundamental reason we can even be here talking about it. The reason we breathe, eat, live. Without it, life on Earth just wouldn't be the same. It might collapse entirely. Its power, its life-giving force. It's humbling when you really think about it.
Voice filled with weight. And yet, for all that it does for us, for everything it represents, we know so little. The same ocean that sustains us, that sparks our imagination, that regulates our planet, still holds more secrets than the stars. That's a profound irony, isn't it? How much we still have to learn right here on our home planet. Shifting tone again, becoming more serious. Visually, the Pacific often looks so calm, doesn't it? That image of the gentle, endless blue giant. Peaceful waves, huge skies. It seems soothing. But the more we dig into this, the more I realize, beneath that calm surface, there's something else entirely. Something untamed, raw power.
A voice lower slightly, becoming more intense. Absolutely. If the Pacific is the Earth's beating heart sustaining life, then the ring of fire that surrounds it. That's the pulse of fury. That's the raw geological power of our planet made visible. Which brings us to it. What exactly is this ring of fire? It sounds dramatic.
The ring of fire. Yeah, let's unpack that. It sounds less like geography and more like mythology, but it's real, right? Encircling this massive ocean. How does it work?
Oh, it's very real and very dramatic. Picture this.
Like a giant fiery horseshoe drawn around the edge of the entire Pacific Ocean basin. That's the ring of fire. And it's not just a line on a map, it's where the action is, geologically speaking. This ring contains about 75% of all the world's active and dormant volcanoes. We're talking over 450 volcanoes packed into this zone. And something like 90% of all the world's earthquakes happen right here within this ring.
90% of earthquakes. Wow.
Yeah.
Think about the geography. It runs up the west coast of South America, through Central America, Mexico, up the U.S. west coast, along the Aleutian Islands of Alaska, down through Japan, the Philippines, Indonesia, and loops around towards New Zealand. The edges of the Pacific are just seismically alive. What's happening is deep down, the Earth's tectonic plates, these huge slabs of crust, are constantly moving and interacting here, grinding against each other, sliding under each other, like giants wrestling in the dark. Most of the time, it's just little shivers, tiny tremors we don't feel. But sometimes, the stress builds up over decades or centuries, and then it releases. Suddenly, violently.
The fire with...
So the Pacific isn't just deep water and weird creatures. It's literally sitting on top of this incredibly active furnace, this boundary where the planet's inner fire breaks through.
That's amazing.
Energy, exactly. It's this incredible duality. And the volcanoes it holds are legendary for their power. Think about Krakatoa in Indonesia back in 1883. It erupted with such unbelievable force. The explosion was reportedly heard almost 3,000 miles away. Can you imagine?
Heard 3,000 miles away. That's insane. Yeah. And the eruption caused these massive tsunamis that swept across the region, killing over 36,000 people. Just devastating. Or, think more recently, Mount St. Helens in Washington state, 1980. It didn't just erupt, it exploded sideways, blew its entire northern flank off. A huge chunk of the mountain just vanished. A stark reminder, this isn't just ancient history. And then you have volcanoes like Mauna Loa in Hawaii. That might look like a gentle giant, this huge shield volcano. But it's the largest active volcano on Earth by volume. Absolutely massive. It covers half the big island. Every eruption, big or small, is just the planet reminding us. The surface might look calm, but underneath, there's molten rock, immense pressure, geological rage, earthquakes and tsunamis. The silent killers.
Tone becomes more serious. Okay, so fire from below. But it's not just eruptions, is it? The ground itself shakes. The Pacific is earthquake central, you said.
Nodding gravely. Oh, yes. If it's volcano country, it's even more so earthquake country. Thousands and thousands of tremors happen along the Ring of Fire every year. Most are tiny, thankfully. You wouldn't even notice them without sensitive instruments. But sometimes the Earth moves in a way that changes everything. Events that scar landscapes and collective memory. Remember the 2004 Indian Ocean earthquake? That was a magnitude 9.1, originating off the coast of Sumatra, right on the Ring of Fire. It was so powerful it ruptured a huge section of the seabed, displacing an enormous amount of water. That generated the devastating tsunami, waves up to 100 feet high in places. Within hours, those waves hit coasts across 14 countries, killing over 230,000 people. An unimaginable scale of tragedy born from one slip of the plates.
230,000 people from one earthquake.
Yeah. And then, 2011, the Tohoku earthquake off the coast of Japan. Magnitude 9.0. That one triggered tsunamis that raced across the entire Pacific basin at the speed of a jetliner, around 500 miles per hour. Whole towns in Japan were just inundated, wiped off the map. It caused the Fukushima nuclear disaster. And the waves caused damage as far away as Chile and California.
Grimly. And that's the truly scary part, isn't it? A tsunami doesn't care about borders. A quake on one side of the Pacific can unleash destruction on the other side just hours later. There's no way to hide from that kind of power. The greater suspense.
Voice lowers again, creating a sense of unease. And here's the thought that really gives me chills. All these terrible events we remember, Krakatoa, Sumatra 2004, Japan 2011, in the grand scheme of geological time, those might just be the smaller ones, or at least not the biggest possible. History and geology tells us about even bigger catastrophes. The eruption of Tambora, also in Indonesia, in 1815, was even bigger than Krakatoa. It pumps so much ash and sulfur dioxide into the atmosphere that it blocks sunlight and cooled the entire planet. 1860 became known as the year without a summer.
A year without a summer, what did that mean?
It meant widespread crop failures, particularly across Europe and North America. Famine, food riots, disease, huge social upheaval, all triggered by one massive eruption on the Ring of Fire. And scientists today, they warn that the geological systems within the Ring of Fire still hold the potential for future super eruptions or megaquakes even larger than 2004 or 2011, and the resulting mega tsunamis. Events far greater than anything humans have recorded in detail. Events that could genuinely reshape coastlines on a continental scale, trigger abrupt climate shifts, maybe even threaten global civilization as we know it.
Sounding uneasy but fascinated. So potentially, one day the Pacific's apparent calm could just shatter. With a fury so immense it redraws the map, changes the climate, rewrites history. That's humbling and terrifying.
Yeah. Speaking thoughtfully, almost poetically. It is. The Pacific isn't just water. It's this elemental dams, fire and water locked together. It's the nurturing mother that feeds billions and gives us air to breathe. And it's also the fierce, untamed force that reminds us periodically just how small and fragile we really are in the face of the planet's raw power.
Softly, awestruck. It's that paradox again, isn't it? The calmest blue hiding the most destructive red. Life-giving and life-taking. Wow. This immense power, this duality. It makes me wonder about our own role. How do we fit into this? What's our impact on this powerful, yet as we'll see, fragile giant? Tone shifts again, becoming more somber and reflective. We tend to think of the Pacific as eternal, right? Unstoppable, this ancient force that's seen empires rise and fall, immune to us tiny humans. But the reality is, it's actually fragile, vulnerable, and the biggest threat it's facing right now, it isn't the volcanoes or the tsunamis, it's us. It's humans, our activities, our waste, our sheer numbers. So what does this human impact actually look like? What are we doing to this vital ocean?
Serious, voice tinged with concern. You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
And what's really alarming, maybe heartbreaking, is how our impact is becoming physically visible, tangible in truly shocking ways. Think about the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. You've heard of it, right? It sounds like a myth, but it's horribly real.
Yeah, I have. It's like a floating island of trash.
Not quite an island you can stand on, more like a vast swirling soup.
Yeah.
Mostly tiny fragments of plastic, broken down but never disappearing, mixed with larger debris like nets and bottles. And it's enormous. Estimates vary, but it covers an area roughly twice the size of Texas, maybe even larger, circulating in the currents. It's this sickening, visible testament to our throwaway culture, a massive floating monument to human waste out there in the middle of nowhere.
Twice the size of Texas, made of our garbage. That's just horrifying. And the poor animals. I've heard about sea turtles mistaking plastic bags for jellyfish, their food. They
Right.
eat it and it just fills their stomachs until they starve, right? It's just awful to picture.
It is awful, and it happens constantly. They die slowly, painfully, with bellies full of our plastic junk. And whales, too. The stories are just devastating. Whales found washed ashore, dead, with kilograms, sometimes dozens of kilograms of plastic waste inside them. Fishing nets, plastic sheeting, cups. Imagine carrying nearly 90 pounds of indigestible garbage inside you until your body just gives up. It's a direct consequence of the sheer volume of plastic pouring into the ocean every year.
Quietly. And it's not just the big pizzas they eat, is it? It's the breakdown, the microplastics.
Exactly. That's maybe even more insidious. As plastic breaks down into smaller and smaller fragments, microplastics that get everywhere. Scientists are finding them now in the deepest parts of the ocean, even down the Mariana Trench, places we thought were pristine. And yes, they're finding them inside the fish we catch and eat. They enter the food chain at the lowest levels, with plankton eating them, and then they work their way up. So effectively, we've contaminated the entire marine food web, right back to our own dinner plates. We're literally eating our own plastic waste. And on top of pollution, there's climate change. Global warming, driven by our emissions, is heating the ocean. And this warming is devastating coral reefs. Those vibrant underwater cities, they're incredibly sensitive to temperature changes. When the water gets too warm for too long, they bleach. They expel the colorful algae that live with them and provide food, and often they die. We're seeing mass bleaching events happening more and more frequently across the Pacific. Entire ecosystems collapsing, fish losing their nurseries and homes, pushing species towards extinction, many we probably haven't even discovered yet.
Sounding grim. And the rising seas, that's linked to warming too, right? The water expands, ice melts.
Exactly. Thermal expansion and melting glaciers and ice sheets are causing sea levels to rise globally. And for low-lying island nations in the Pacific, places like Tuvalu, Kiribati, the Marshall Islands, this is an existential threat. Not a future problem, but happening now. Some islands could become completely uninhabitable or even disappear entirely beneath the waves within decades. Think about that. An entire nation, its culture, its history, its land, just erased by rising water, not due to a natural disaster, but as a direct result of global human activity, mostly happening far away. It's profound injustice. We think of evolution as this slow, majestic process over millennia. But the pressures we're putting on the Pacific, pollution, warming, acidification, are forcing marine life to try and adapt at unnatural breakneck speed. Some species might manage it, developing resistance to toxins maybe. Others are physically changing, like fish populations becoming smaller on average. But many species simply can't keep up. They can't evolve fast enough, and so they're just dying out. Populations are crashing. Biodiversity is plummeting.
A heavy pause. Scientists keep warning us, don't they? We're changing the ocean, changing life within it, faster than it can possibly cope. And that's terrifying because the Pacific isn't just another ecosystem. It's fundamental to the planet's health.
Sure.
If we break its ability to function, to make oxygen, absorb carbon, regulate climate calmer, the consequences for everyone, everywhere, will be catastrophic.
It leads to this deeply haunting question, doesn't it? A question that hangs over all our exploration and discovery. Is the Pacific dying before we even get to fully know it? Before we understand the life it holds, are we destroying this incredible vital system out of ignorance and negligence? It forces us to confront our collective responsibility. What future are we choosing for this ocean and therefore for ourselves?
Voice soft, reflective. Because if we lose the Pacific, if we damage it beyond repair, we don't just lose a big patch of blue on the map. We lose a core part of Earth's life support system. We lose irreplaceable biodiversity. We lose a part of the planet's soul. And ultimately, we endanger our own future. Calmly, bringing the journey to a close.
Well, we started this deep dive as travelers, didn't we? Sailing across the immense waves of the Pacific, at least in our minds. We've journeyed from its mind-boggling scale and its ancient mythical presence in human culture to its absolute vital role as the planet's beating heart, shaping our climate, giving us air, sustaining life itself. We explored its hidden alien depths and felt the heat of its fiery, untamed edges.
Reflectively. And then, inevitably, the journey turned back towards us, towards humanity. We saw how our actions, our plastic, our carbon emissions, our demands for resources are leaving a deep footprint on this vast ocean. How they ripple outwards, affecting everything from the smallest plankton to the largest whale, from the surface to the deepest trench. The Pacific carries our dreams of paradise, yes, but it also now carries the undeniable burden of our mistakes. A gentle pause. So, as we bring this exploration to a close, we don't really want to leave you with neat answers. Because maybe there aren't any. Instead, perhaps we can leave you with a question to carry away. Something to think about.
Softly, thoughtfully. If the ocean and all its immense power, its surprising fragility, its deep mystery, if it truly acts as a mirror reflecting humanity, then what do you see when you look into that reflection today? Do you see mostly our greed, our short-sightedness? Or do you still see glimpses of our capacity for wonder, for care, for grace?
Warmly, sincerely. That, perhaps, is for each of us to ponder. Until our next deep dive, may your thoughts flow like the tides deep, calm, and always alive with curiosity.